In the first part of this EVU mini course, you learned that range is the distance you can travel when the EV battery is fully charged. We discussed the overall factors that affect range: battery capacity, vehicle parameters such as speed and the vehicle design, and the influence of driving conditions. In the second part of this mini course, we'll discuss vehicle parameters in a bit more detail and delve into the effect of driving conditions on range. As we've discussed, design is a pivotal factor in building an EV with good range, and a major design objective is to reduce drag. Drag area is the front-facing area that is impacted by airflow as the vehicle moves forward, measured in either square feet or square meters. To illustrate how a few of the most popular EVs compare to one another, here's a histogram for drag area, represented in yellow, and the drag coefficient, represented in blue. To make the chart easier to read, we've multiplied the drag coefficient by 10. It's important to note two things. Drag area is not the only parameter that affects aerodynamic drag, and hundredths matter when the drag coefficient is considered. Pause your video for just a moment and examine the chart to get a feel for how EVs compare. Looks can be deceiving when drag is considered. Small cars don't necessarily have the lowest drag area. Fast cars don't necessarily have the lowest drag coefficient. Remember, for a drag coefficient, the lower the number, the slipperier the car, and for EVs, the better the range for a given battery capacity. Consider the Tesla Model S. It's a big car, but it has the lowest drag area of any production EV to date. It also has the lowest coefficient of drag for any production EV to date. The Tesla Model S has a drag coefficient of 0.24. That's shockingly lower than the Corvette ZR1 with a drag coefficient of 0.28, and surprisingly, much lower than the $2.1 million sports car, the Bugatti Veyron, with a drag coefficient of 0.36. So to get good range, an EV must be slippery. But to get a feel for drag forces, we have to descend into some math for just a moment. Those of you who might be math challenged probably panicked for just a little bit when this equation appeared, but it's important for your understanding of EV range. At the end of the day, range is dominated by the laws of physics and aerodynamics, but you don't have to be a math and science major to get this. It's really pretty simple. As I measured earlier, your battery must provide the energy necessary to generate the force required to push your EV through the air. The more force required over time, the less range you'll get out of your battery. From the equation, CD is the drag coefficient. The lower, the better. Remember, for the Tesla Model S, it was 0.24. A is the drag area. Again, the lower, the better. Rho is the air density, which has relatively low variability. And V is velocity. That is how fast you drive. Note that force is affected as the square of the velocity. The goal of every automotive designer is to keep the force, F sub D, as low as is possible. But there are other environmental factors that also affect range. Most of these are out of your control, but they do matter. The direction and velocity of the wind can have an immediate effect on range. That's simply common sense. If you're driving into a strong wind, more force is required and range is affected. The same goes for terrain you're driving over. If it's hilly or mountainous, range will be affected, possibly as much as 30% in extreme situations. Temperature effects are more subtle, but very cold weather can have a significant effect on the battery and therefore on range. In fact, Temperature can reduce range by as much as 20 to 30% in very cold weather. Finally, as I mentioned in part 1 of this mini course, anything like a roof rack or a bicycle rack that you attach to the exterior of an EV can have an effect on range, and generally that effect is not good. In addition to the topics we've discussed, plugincars.com offers these suggestions for improving the range of your EV. Check your tire pressure. Rolling resistance can affect range. Look for travel routes with small gradients and few intersections. Schedule your charging to stop just before you begin driving. This reduces the likelihood of any small losses that might occur as the car sits idle with a full charge. Give yourself more time, resulting in relaxed driving and more effective use of regen. An earlier EVU mini course, we discussed various PHEV architectures and noted different modes of operation for PHEVs. To determine the all-electric range, a PHEV must be used in what we learned to call charge depleting mode. That means the PHEV is running solely off the battery with no ICE assist. In such cases, the all-electric range for PHEVs is usually quite low. However, in balanced mode or charge sustaining mode, the range of a PHEV combines the ICE and the battery and can easily exceed 300 miles. Let's summarize what we discussed. Range is the distance you can travel on a full battery. Vehicle parameters and aerodynamic conditions affect range. Vehicle speed and aerodynamic drag play a significant role, but battery capacity is a dominant issue. Now that you understand range, it's time to consider range anxiety. And we'll do that in the next EVU mini course in this sequence.